Hey everybody, I'm Quinn Bradlee, founder and CEO of Friends of Quinn, and today my interviewee is Indy race car driver Stan Watles. Stan, do you remember when you were diagnosed with dyslexia and the feeling that you felt?
Yes, I remember it was in fifth grade. Actually, I was kind of a wild child and having difficulty in school. And one of my grandmother's friends, who was a retired school teacher, had myself and my brother do a bunch of different sort of motor skills and draw pictures. And she suggested to my mother that we get tested. And this was back in the late 60s. So the only facility for testing was through the state. And we lived in Connecticut. And I remember going to these various psychiatrists and psychologists and everybody, and they actually took calipers and measured my eye distance and skull and all this sort of very sort of medieval, archaic kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And eventually it was brought to light that I had learning disabilities.
hmm
How that made me feel? Well, I can't really tell you how it made me feel at the time. I can't really recall, but I definitely knew there was something different about me.
hmm
And I think I felt a little bit of relief when I understood what was going on, in the sense that now maybe I'd be able to learn like the other kids around me.
What was the most difficult thing for you in school?
Well, obviously, it was the social was very difficult, and when you're young, 10, 11 years old, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, your social network is really important. And I was ridiculed a lot by most of the kids, and to sort of prove myself, I would beat the upperclassmen up and things like that. And I also, my two best friends, one of them was very uncoordinated and overweight, and the other one was born with a deformity of missing the fingertips on most of his fingers on his right hand. So these two were guys who were sort of ostracized and
hmm
shunned by all the other kids. So they were my only buddies, and it was a very very difficult time before I was able to have the facility to deal with the learning disabilities.
How did you get into racing? Did you finish school? Did you decide to leave school, go right to racing?
Because of the behavioral problems that my learning disabilities caused me, my parents kept me away from four wheels and an engine as long as they could. They thought that would be a bad thing. And so I didn't start racing until I was out of college. And that was when I was 25.
So when did you openly start to talk about your dyslexia and talk to other people about it?
I actually started a program called Racing to Make a Difference while I was racing IndyCar. And that's when I think I really came out and spoke very openly about my learning differences. Because I would visit schools or have children come to the track for kids who had learning differences, learning disabilities.
hmm
And I would share my experience, strength, and hope with them.
And how did that help you compensate with your learning disabilities?
Well, it's interesting. I think when I think about it, and sort of the evolution of that, it was more of learning how to give myself a break,
hmm
and understanding that this is something that will always be with me. I still reverse letters and have difficulty with sometimes with perception and things like that, but obviously not to the degree that I had when I was younger. But to accept it as a part of me, and say, oh, whoop, made a mistake. Okay, I'll back up, and I'll change that. And thank God for spell check.
Yeah.
That was probably one of my worst deficits, was my spelling, and still is today.
Mhm. Don't get me started.
Yeah, right. But it's accepting my difficulty, and just understanding that there are some things I have to do a little bit slower than other people, and that's fine. There's some things I have a very
Except for when
difficult.
you get into a car and drive 250 miles per hour.
That's it, man. That's it. That I can do.
Yeah.